Welcome back to Pro Football Rundown with Brady Quinn. I'm Jorge. This time now to look at whose draft stock is rising. And with that said, Brady, as we get closer to the draft, what's one player who you see climbing there in the ranks?
It's going to be Demarcus Walker from Florida State, defensive end, 6'4", 280 pounds, and he's a senior, so he's going to be going off into the draft, but he definitely improved his draft stock this season. 16 sacks on the year. That's second in the country.
Wow.
And if you watch the Orange Bowl, he was constantly pestering Wilton Speight. He had 1 sack in the game, 4 tackles total, but he had some quarterback hurries, some quarterback hits. It seemed like wherever Speight tried to escape to, Demarcus Walker was there, and he was a lot of times the guy who was disrupting everything in the backfield if someone else was able to get to Wilton Speight. So this young man made himself some money this season, and definitely in the bowl game in the Orange Bowl. He was spectacular. I'll be curious to see how he kind of projects once we get into the combine, the pro day, and all that, with some of the different on-the-field drills like the 5-10-5,
Sure.
L drill, those types of things that really that's what they evaluate the defensive players at.
Let's bring in CBS Sports college football writer Dennis Dodd on the conversation. Dennis, you heard what Brady had to say there. Whose draft stock is rising in your opinion?
Same vein on the defensive line after watching North Carolina and Stanford in that Sun Bowl. Players stood out to me with Solomon Thomas, 6'3", 275, defensive end, defensive tackle hybrid. He seemed like he was harassing Mitch Trubisky most of the game. 7 tackles, 1 sack, 2 TFLs. Earlier in the season, he had his defining game, 12 tackles against Notre Dame. And I think as a guy with, I hate to say this, a high motor, I mean, every time I turn on the TV, he's making plays. So an underclassman, I believe, at Stanford. He's is one of the great defensive linemen to come out of there in recent years, and rated the #1 defensive end right now in the draft by CBSSports.com, which would put him probably in the top 15. I just love to watch this kid play. He's always making plays.
Go ahead.
Big-time player. The biggest question with Solomon Thomas to me is where does he fit? You heard Dennis talk about him. He's played some D-tackle, played some D-end. He's 6'3", 278 pounds, so he's kind of a tweener. And when you look at his comparison to me, when I watch his game, his skill set, it's actually very similar to Aaron Donald. The difference is Darnold's smaller. He's about 6'1", but he's heavier. So about 285 pounds, which I think they'll put some weight on Solomon Thomas. You know, once he weighs in at the combine, I think you'll see that this young man's probably be heavier at that point in time than what he's listed at probably in the media guy. But it's his height that's the difference. And that's where sometimes you see when the guys are tall like that, they like to put them on the outside because they have a little bit more reach, a little bit more length, and they can get their hands up in those passing lanes to knock down those passes. But there's no doubt about it. He's been one of the best defensive players in the country, definitely the best in the Pac-12 this year as far as a defensive lineman. And, you know, he's a guy we talked about before that bowl matchup.
Yeah.
Seldom teams have been able to stop him as far as penetrating, getting in the backfield. He's been fantastic.
It'll definitely be an upgrade to a lot of defenses out there in the pro NFL level that need that type of a player.